This lecture will be on Neolithic Age or the New Stone Age, and exactly we'll go to discuss about human settlement. So, in regards to that one, agriculture started practicing from growing plants in the Mesolithic period. Thus it paved the way for a settled life. Man started living in pit dwellings, mud houses, and houses made of wooden posts with thatched roofs. The settlements were generally near the fields which the people cultivated. These settlements gradually developed into villages and even small fortified towns, which helped them to protect themselves and their animals from wild beasts. This settled life led also to the development of organized social life. Neolithic culture, which started in Asia, spread much later to Europe. Much is known of developments in Europe from the lake dwellings of Switzerland, where houses were built close to the source of the lakes and raised on piles when the water level rose. The remains of these dwellings are well preserved and give a clear picture of life of the dwellers. So the very development of mixed farming, so how the domestication of animals began is little known. Perhaps there were large numbers of animals in areas near water where men also were concentrated. Here man could observe the animals and study their habits, and this knowledge must have enabled him to tame them. It was again easy for an agricultural people to domesticate animals and feed them on their horse and feed them therewith their horse of the grain that were left after fasting. In any event, sheep and goats, pigs and cattle, and later horses and asses were tamed and kept in pens. Man thus obtained food from the soil and also from animals. This practice, which combines agriculture with the raising of animals, is known as mixed farming. So, animals, however, were chiefly used to provide meat and milk. They were kept to be used as beasts of burden or to draw the flock. The development of agriculture brought varied changes. It became necessary to conserve the food that was not immediately used. The whole crop could not be consumed as soon as it was reaped. It had to last over the whole year till the next harvest, with a part of it set aside for the purpose of seed, grain storage. Whence have thus been found even in the earliest Neolithic settlements. Similarly, livestock could not be slaughtered thoughtlessly. The young cows must be spared and reared to provide milk and to increase the herd. The increasing surplus provided food during bad seasons and crop failures and also supported a growing population. It was the dependable and increasing supply of food in an agricultural economy that led to the growth of population. Villagers became larger and some grew into towns, and in consequence of mixed farming, the Neolithic Age then started polished stone tools. Neolithic tools are distinguished from the Paleolithic chiefly on account of their higher utility and more skillful construction. An important tool of the Neolithic times was the polished stone silt. It was made of a large piece of fine-grained stone. One end of it was ground down and polished to sharpen the cutting edge. By fixing it into the end of a stick, it could be used as an axe. It was used to clear forest, and it also enabled man to cut and shape timber, which led to the growth of carpentry. The knowledge of carpentry thus gained was to be used for making plows, wheels, plank, boats, and wooden houses. Another important tool of the Neolithic people was the sickle. This was made of a wooden handle into which blades of flint flax were set. It was used to cut and gather the crop. There were, however, great improvements in the weapons of war and hunting. The bow and arrow continued to be used, although arrowheads were made sharper. In some areas, people used a new weapon, and that is the sling. The Neolithic man also started making use of bone and antler for making tools like needles and harpoons. And also they invented the use of pottery. To store and cook food, vessels were needed which could hold grains and liquids as well as stand heat. At the beginning of Neolithic times, baskets made of straw were used to store fruits and dry things. They were smeared with mud to hold liquids. It may have to be happened that such a basket fell into the fire by accident, with the result that the straw was burnt out while the layer of clay was left standing in the shape of a dish hardened by the fire. This dish of baked clay was found to be waterproof. The clay neither mixed with water nor was washed away. In this way, perhaps man got the idea of making and baking pottery. So, now we'll discuss about another invention that the Neolithic period man made regarding spinning and weaving. So, in that sense, among the remains of the earlier Neolithic villages in West Asia, we find the beginnings of a textile industry. Cloth is woven of linen, cotton, and wool had started replacing skins and skids of leaves. Cotton was grown in the Indus Valley soon after 3000 years before Christ. Wool was used in Iran about the same time, but before textile or woven cloth could be made, the two textiles processes of spinning and weaving had to be invented and used together, and after that they started living a community life. So the division of labor made it possible for various groups to specialize, that is to acquire greater skill and learn better technique in doing one kind of work. The settled community life needed rules to regulate the behavior of the members of the community. It is not possible to know exactly how regulations were established. It appears that the decisions regarding the community were taken by the people as a whole or by a council of elders, as is the practice in all tribal societies of present day. There were perhaps no kings or any organized governments. So it appears that cultivated land was regarded as the property of the community as a whole. The community gave plots of land to individual families to cultivate, or the entire community worked on the common fields. It is likely, however, that the ownership of land gradually passed into the hands of individual families, and plots of lands became family property instead of belonging to the whole community. Houses, pots, and ornaments must also have been the property of individual family. And now we'll go to their religious beliefs. The very system of burying the dead provides some indication the religious beliefs of the Neolithic people. The dead were buried with weapons, pottery, food, and drink in their graves in the belief that they would require these things even after deaths or graves are found in the Paleolithic period also. Perhaps in the Neolithic period there was a change in the significance of the graves. The earth now provided food for the community. The spirits of dead ancestors who lay under the earth were supposed to assist in the growth of crops. There is also evidence of this belief in totems. A totem is the image of an animal or a plant as a symbol for a clan or group of families living together. In early times, people believed that animals and men had the same ancestor, and that animals, by providing food for men, were a friend or relative even after man had taken to agriculture. His life was not entirely secure. There was always the danger of some catastrophe destroying his crops, livestock, and game. These conditions of insecurity and man's inability to understand the process of nature led to the belief that the welfare of the community was bound up with an animal and was completely dependent upon it. Such beliefs developed about trees and plants, and also man should choose animals and trees to be their totems and their ancestors and protectors. So, this made man to invent small clay figurines of women have been found in many Neolithic settlements in many parts of the world. These figurines are called mother goddesses. When man began to cultivate the soil, the earth became the mother. And the figurines were worshipped in the belief that the fertility of land would increase. Music and art of the Neolithic people were similarly related to the hopes and fears of man. The burial places of some of the communities in Neolithic Age and of some in later periods were marked with megaliths or large stones. Such places have been found in Western Europe and South India. Some of these appear as single huge standing stones, others look like tabletops set on several high stones or boulders. And all such these we found the megaliths in some places were also used for building a kind of temple to worship the sun god at the time of summer solstice, when the sun's power is at its greatest. One such structure is the famous Stonehenge in England. Here large stones were set and fitted to form a semicircle, part of which was kept to form a doorway. And now we'll go to Neolithic man's greatest invention, and that is wheel. So, about this time, perhaps man invented the wheel, which brought about a technological revolution. It is difficult to imagine even today what we would do without the wheel. Its invention must have undergone many stages before it took on a usable form. The ultimate product must have been the result of improved carpentry. This was made possible by the discovery and use of metals. The first use to the wheel was put appears to be in the preparation of pottery. This is the potter's wheel, and it must have made pottery a specialized craft. The wheel may then have been used in drawing a cart. Man had already learned the use of wheel-less sledges. Round trunks of trees were also rolled to carry heavy articles. The wheeled cart made transportation very much simpler, and soon animals were used to draw it. The wheel was also used quite early in spinning. The story of man from the remote past to the growth of settled life is a story of progress. The pace of progress was slow in the beginning but became quicker with the Neolithic Age. In the Paleolithic period, man's central problem was how to keep himself alive. This problem, as with animals, took most of his time and effort. Yet, unlike animals, he could talk and make tools, and thus took the first steps In his struggle to control his environment, the pace of human progress quickened by about 8,000 years before Christ with the coming of the Neolithic Age. Man became a food producer and could change nature to suit his, and several inventions followed to pave the way for the development of civilization. Man now produced his own food by growing crops. He domesticated animals, made pottery, produced cloth, and developed techniques for making polished stone tools. Above all, he seems to have invented the wheel. So all this enabled him to lead a settled life in an organized community. Cooperative living provided man with leisure and the opportunity to further increase his knowledge. So, by starting it from the Neolithic Revolution, which paved the way for the beginning of great civilizations on the river banks, such as the Mesopotamian or Sumerian civilization, the Nile civilization of Egypt, the Indus Valley civilization, the Chinese civilization, the Maya and Inca civilizations in Southern America. So, in our next lectures, we'll deal about those civilizations in detail, which were developed due to the evolution, or we could say the Neolithic Revolution.